Hello everyone, this is Chromý and together we will continue the course Interdisciplinary Approaches to Language and its Use. In this presentation we will focus on the process of language acquisition during the first year of life. In the previous presentation we mentioned that the newborns already have certain abilities which are necessary for successful acquisition of a language. The next question we would like to ask is what actually happens before babies start to speak, or more precisely, before they start to produce their first words. What we know from the study by Janet Werker and Richard Thies, there is an abrupt decline in the ability to discriminate the non-native contrasts when the baby is around 10 to 12 months. This is important since approximately at this time, children start to produce their first words. The decline in the ability to discriminate the non-native contrasts is related to what we will further call tuning to the native language. On this slide, you can see a useful schema from a study by Patricia Kuhl. In the middle, there is the timeline from 0 to 12 months. Above the timeline, there are the major steps which happen in language perception. And below the timeline, we can see the important stages in language production. According to this schema, which is based on scientific findings from various research teams, we can see that the closer a baby gets to its first birthday, the more attuned to its native language it is. One important thing which is necessary to acquire words is the ability to segment the speech. If you would look closely to how speech actually looks like, you could see that the flow of speech is continuous. It is very hard to say where does a word begin or end if you don't know the language. There may be various cues which might help you, such as word stress, but the baby must first uncover the underlying principles. To illustrate this point, we may look at two examples. One is from Czech and the other one from Hungarian. If you are a native speaker of Czech, the first task would be very easy for you. However, you will probably struggle with the second one. If you do not know Czech or only to a limited extent, you should have problems with the first example too. Let's hear both examples and try to count the number of words there are. Let's start with the Czech example.
Já chci bydlet na místě, kde mi bude dobře.
Let's do it once more.
Já chci bydlet na místě, kde mi bude dobře.
And now, let's hear the Hungarian example.
Egy nő papírt fűz az írógépébe.
And once more.
Egy nő papírt fűz az írógépébe.
What do you think? How many words did you hear? Here are the transcripts of the two examples. As you can see, the Czech example consisted of 9 words and its meaning was I want to live in a place where I will be fine. Whereas the Hungarian example consisted of 6 words and it meant a woman puts a paper in a typewriter. Is that a surprise for you? You can see that word segmentation is definitely not straightforward if you do not know the language. Much before producing their first words, infants use certain vocalizations. The first vocalization stage is called cooing and the second stage is called babbling. Infants are cooing typically between 3 and 6 months of age. The vocalizations are typically formed in the throat and in the back of the oral cavity. They do not resemble the speech sounds that much, but may be interpreted as one of the signs of the tuning to the native language too. To illustrate the point, let's hear an example of cooing. Another vocalization stage is babbling. It usually takes place between 6 and 12 months of age, and it is typical for the use and repeating of various syllables. This is an example of babbling of a Czech infant. As you could hear, the infant produces quite a lot of syllables. The question of interest is whether babbling is sort of a universal vocalization stage, or whether it is somehow related to the specific language the infant is acquiring. The relationship between babbling and early speech was analyzed by Peter McNeilich, Barbara Davis, and Christine Mathieu. They analyzed over 150 hours of audio recordings of 4 infants. The recordings covered both babbling and the use of first words. The main finding of the research was that the sounds and sound patterns of babbling and early speech are basically the same. In other words, the sounds and syllables used in babbling have a tendency to be used also in the first words. This finding supports the idea that babbling is a language-specific stage which is tightly connected to early speech. Before we will conclude this presentation, I have one reading tip for you. In case you would like to learn more about the language acquisition during the first year of life, you may read this review article by Judith Gervain and Jacques Mellet. This is all from me now. See you next time.